Good evening and welcome to Paranormal Verses with myself, Kell Ridley, and my wonderful co-host, Michael Kopf. And we're here joined tonight with our amazing guest, Barry Fitzgerald, who's from Ghost Hunters International. And he's currently, have you currently got your book out, Barry? Or
yes, there's a book just come out in March called The Deceptions of Gods and Men.
Yeah, that's right. So for our fans, could you tell us a bit about yourself and what you do?
Sure, yeah. I'm an investigator into the paranormal predominantly, and I've been doing this now for over 35 years. A lot of people will know me from the sci-fi show Ghost Hunters International. We finished filming that in 2011. And since then, I have devoted my attention to understanding our ancestors and delving into what they were leaving for us, moving forward. And I really started exploring the myths and legends of Ireland in particular, and seeing that how a lot of what they were leaving behind and what a lot of the stone structures that were left behind thousands of years ago, we're now deciphering those and understanding them more, and more to the point, what they were actually communicating with.
Interesting. So from one of the things that I've actually heard, that you had an experience with a banshee.
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh.
Could you tell a bit about that, please?
Me and the banshee, we're like that. But part of my interest into the banshee really came when we started to see and investigate this element of the myth and legend within Ireland, and in particular to see if there was anything of that legend that would still linger in the landscape today.
Mm-hmm.
So not only were we looking at the banshee, we were looking at other legends as well. But the banshee, I have to say, the moment that we settled down and started to write the first introduction to the book, if you like, that particular night she came to the property that I lived in. I lived here in the west of Ireland in an old converted Methodist church, and it was a private residence now. And whenever she came, she scared the absolute bejesus clean out of me. I wasn't expecting that. Now, don't get me wrong, I had heard the banshee before, but never that close.
Mm-hmm.
That this entity was immediately outside the church windows.
Wow.
And she really rattled every bone in my body. But the banshee, for us, the banshee is labeled as a fairy, and I feel that does it some injustice, because banshee, when you break the title down, it means some people would surmise it means woman of the fairy, the she being the fairy. But as you can see behind me in this picture here, this is the mound. These are the stone mounds that dot across our landscape, these ancient structures that were built by people coming from Iraq and Syria thousands of years ago.
Wow.
Now, whenever I was going through the history, I was finding some references within some of the Babylonian tablets, the Sumerian tablets, that were making reference to an entity that was almost identical to the banshee. Now, these people who were building the mounds were coming from the Middle East.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems that this particular aspect of Babylon came with them. So banshee actually means woman of the mounds. She meaning mounds, these stone structures. So it's woman of the mounds. These beings were coming through the mounds. They were portals from another place.
Wow.
And I've had many encounters with not only the banshee, but of course others that have come through the mounds, and I've had the opportunity even to photograph them. So it has been really a great experience. And I have to say, one of the other things that really drove me to to writing the Banshee was that there was some claims that were made about her, which I felt again did her a great injustice. In that some people were saying that if you hear the cry of the Banshee, you'll die. That is not the case.
Right.
You do not. The Banshee has a certain amount of feeling about her and understanding of what she's there to do. You see, the Banshee, in a group of 10 people, 9 people will hear her cry, but the 10th will not, because it's the 10th that's going to die, the one who doesn't hear her, because she's announcing to the others, be prepared, death is coming. So that in itself showed that there was a certain amount of softness to her. And another claim was that she's never been heard in Ireland since the 1950s. That's absolute rubbish, because we were interviewing people right around Ireland, and including people who were arriving on holiday, tourists to the island, who also had encounters here. And also then by the time they got home, they found out that their friend or their family member had passed away.
Wow.
So there is that aspect to it. Now, what is she? She is something that is coming across from the void. It's almost like she's guiding that aspect of what she's here to claim. She's guiding that back toward the mountains and back into the void. Because today we have a totally different approach to death as what we compared to the builders of these ancient chambers. So there's a lot breaking down in that. Even in our own customs within the last 50 years has changed considerably. Because now we're a lot of people are dying now in hospital. There's a lot of action going on around them and everything else. Where before, 50 years ago, everyone had to be quiet during the process of transition. The house had to be quiet, and you know the curtains were drawn, and the passing was peaceful. Well, nowadays it's like, oh my God, it's like being in a disco somewhere, for God's sake, and you're going through this process of transition, and you've got all this going on around you. So that in itself has changed considerably, and I think that has really sparked some things, and really addresses some things that we really should be looking at.
Yeah. What's interesting, Barry, is when you were talking about your description of her, my mind all of a sudden jumped and said, that sounds like a Valkyrie from the Norse who would come in and help guide.
Of course. Yeah.
The other side.
Though I have to say, in regards to the Valkyrie, of course, they were on their way in to help warriors who had died on the battlefield. That has not happened here in a very, very long time. But yeah, I suppose something similar. You know, the Valkyrie were female as well, and they were seen as these people that brought the people on to another level of I suppose spiritual life.
So obviously you've done a lot of investigating then over the years, and so what would you say your best paranormal evidence is to date?
I think there'd be multiple ones there that would all share the top notch. But there was one in particular during GHI when we were in oh my goodness, it was the island of Australia. I can't remember the name, but now it's left my head. But we had landed there, and there was this old prison that was settled there, and it had burnt down and fallen into disrepair. But there was an old church that set up in the hill. Now it had burned as well, so all that was left were the four walls. But they had these beautiful lights that lit up the church at night, and we hadn't started to film yet. So we were there the night before, and it was myself and Joe Chin. We were walking around. We had in fact, no, we didn't have a crew at that stage. and I wanted to get a shot of the church on my camera, so I just put it on a long exposure. It was a full spectrum camera, and at that moment, then I realized that I had got something, because coming from the church was this shadow that was mid stride. Now, I don't understand how that got on there, because it was a 30-second exposure that should have left a blur all the way across the image, but it didn't. It was a solid state, as if it just went pop, pop, and was gone.
Wow.
And the camera caught it. So that one really has me scratching my head. To this day, I still can't understand how that happened. And especially the way that the camera captures the image. But yeah, so that was definitely one. And I just can't remember the name of that blasted island. It had the Tasmania. I had to remember it there because of the little Tasmanian devils that I was seeing down on the island. So
Yeah.
Tasmania, that's where it was.
Wow.
So I have an interesting question for you, Barry, that kind of Kell and I were asked last night on an interview is, with you being based in Ireland, how do you feel that the island affects the paranormal?
I think for us, there's a lot of our heritage helps us with that. Like my DNA is something like 56% Celtic, who were deeply spiritual, and then I've got another quarter Nordic influence in there as well. So I think all of that has helped instill that. And coming from the island, we have a deep reverence for the unseen, and its multifacets, whether that be religious or whether it be supernatural, the folklore, or the old pagan beliefs. It's all there. It's all shared on the same island. Now, I was down at Halloween this year, and there's where Halloween was born down in County Meath. This is where it originated from. We call the ancestors back during that particular process, and that is an absolutely wondrous thing to experience, and see. It's a once in a lifetime thing, really, and I highly recommend, if you get a chance to come across to Ireland at Halloween, go to that festival. It is like nothing else. You won't see a trick or treater anywhere near it. This is totally different, and it's something that really stands out as being very, 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 very unique in its own way. Awesome. So I think that, Michael, in itself helps us, I suppose, ground to where we are. And we often hear tell of this process of going out, the new age meditation, where you take your shoes off and you go out and you ground yourself. That in itself was also a Celtic tradition. When the king was selected of the tribe, it was his duty to ground himself, to remove his footwear and go out and become one with the earth, with the female deity that oversaw everything that was going on. So that aspect, that was something that really originated from there. And this belief as well that we have, nowadays we see it as a new age thing, that they've wrote books about it called The Secret, where if you want something from the universe, you do all this rigmarole and send it out, and then it comes back to you and you get what you want. Well, we were always led to believe, this was something that was, it was always a secret. It was something new. But no, it's not. 2,000 years ago, the Druids here called it Grinholt. So it's nothing new. We've got things that we're inheriting from our ancestors, and sometimes we get it in cycles. And sometimes these cycles are very much, they're subconscious cycles that we pick up on. And I think Ireland as a whole is a perfect example of that. And I can see it in other places as well. But certainly, speaking from my own quarter of the world, when the Celts arrived here in 500 BC, they really utilize this idea called a Celtic wheel, in which if you wanted to know anything about the ancients, you went west. If you want to know anything about the arts, poetry, music, storytelling, you went south. If you want to know anything about politics, you went east. And if you want to know anything about war, you went north. Now, Northern Ireland, of course, has had its problems. But when we put it in context of 500 BC, this is before Protestant and Catholic. This is a cycle. And it's something that we can see in history, that it will cycle again and again, and come under a different heading. But when we strip it back to its fundamental basics, it's about a certain aspect of the land calling for its court.
We have a question from Andy DeCote saying, does Barry have any projects coming up that you can talk about?
I do have projects, Andy, and mind your own business.
You tell me.
I was working down further south in the country at this place is a portal where a lot of spiritual activity has been reported and has been filmed. But in particular, on my way back from that place last Saturday, I ended up photographing this object in the sky, and I thought, oh, there we go, that's it, started now. By the middle of the night, that night, I was filming these things in the sky behind my home, and they were there for 45 minutes, on top of two very old mountain ranges. And that is something that we tend to see. We get a lot of this phenomena coming through the rocks, and certainly this was no exception. But to see them dance around and do what they're doing on the night scopes, it was it's a rare opportunity to be able to film the true phenomena like that. Now, I was able to film it for about 10 minutes, and then the camera malfunctioned. But I was able to observe it for around 45 minutes. So yeah, there are projects going on, Andy, and you'll just have to wait till Awakenings next year to find out.
We've got another question. Matt Atkinson's asked, what does Barry think about leprechauns? True or only Irish folklore?
There is a leprechaun hunt every March, and it's over in Omeath, just close to Carlingford, and you can go there if you like and hunt leprechauns up and down the hill all you want, and then you can nip into the local and cater to your thirst that you've worked up over the mountain. Now, leprechauns, of course, what we see in the movies are nothing to what they were reported initially. They stank to high heaven. They were the meanest SOBs that there were around. They're not something that sits back and mends your shoes and hides in the gold. No, they were nasty, very nasty in the original sense. But now, of course, everything has changed. Now, we've got the influence of modern media, which has completely changed what we would interpret as being fairy. Especially, I would have to say, especially from this. From the 1900s moving forward, where you've got the little girls who were photographing fairies at the bottom of the garden, that really helped change this perception of what we think fairies are, because what they are is completely different, and really stands on its head. So there we go. Leprechauns, are they real? Well, I would have to say probably not.
So that actually brings me to another question that I'm curious about, because I have a lot of friends in Ireland, and I get mixed reviews from this, is the Fae. the
Yes.
fairies, the leprechauns, all of them.
Uh,
Do you feel like they are around in the land, or no, that this is just folklore that was told to kids to kind of keep them in line?
so what would you like me to say?
Well, I'm just curious of your view of the Fae, like beyond the fairy folk and leprechauns, all the other mystical creatures of Ireland. Do you feel like they are there, or
They are there. Yes, they are, without a shadow of a doubt. In fact, I've photographed them on location. That in itself has really. I really deal with a lot of this within the latest book, The Deceptions of Gods and Men, because a lot of the phenomena that we're dealing with shares a common factor, and there is a fine thread that weaves its way through a lot of this fringe research field, and we tend to get a lot of this phenomena would suggest the phenomena is the same. Forget about the mask. How we see the fairy, the fae, and we've got other ones, the incubus, succubus, and all the rest. All of those, they're all masks of the phenomena, because the fairy are the exact same as what we would call jinn in the Middle East. They're the exact same. They act the same. The phenomena in which it interacts with us is the same for the grey aliens that we're now dealing with these days. So you've got all this range of masks and interpretation that we've had over thousands of years, but the way that they interact with us remains the same. So all this suggests this is coming from the same source. And one of their main weaknesses, during stages where they do manifest, where they phase into our reality, they have an absolute hatred for iron.
why do you think that is?
The incubus and succubus, for instance, if we just concentrate on those just for a second, the incubus and succubus wait until their target becomes anemic. 9 times out of 10, they'll attack women more so than men, because they wait until the ladies have entered their monthly cycles. They become anemic. That's when they attack. So when iron is around, they do not manifest. They are petrified of that. There are reasons for that, but that's coming out in the next book. I can't talk about the reasons why that is, because it's really groundbreaking what we have discovered. But from our perspective, we see this common factor across the board, and many of them I have experienced it myself. I've went toe to toe with the incubus. I've gone toe to toe with the fairy. I've gone toe to toe with the jinn. And by doing this, by putting my own neck in the line, I'm able to experience the phenomena, strip away the mask, and look at the details, and then watch for weaknesses. And that's what I've been doing. And that includes the grey aliens, the greys. They also despise. And this is a bit of a wake up here when we consider that if greys are coming from Mars or wherever the hell they're coming from, why do they share the same weakness as this other stuff in history? It's nothing more than a mask. This stuff has already been, it is here and has been here before we were. But we're going one step further with this next book. We're actually pinpointing where it's coming from.
Right. Interesting.
I can't think of a better way to promote a no coming book than right there. I'm like, I want to read that book. It's like, when is it going to be published?
Well, I didn't think it was going to be published because there was so much kickback from it that it nearly ruined us physically and financially and every other way. But we've pretty much broke through it now, and the progress is being made, and it is really, really good progress. The problem is that we're pulling on a lot of science. We have to simplify the science. So that's where we're we're slowing down at the moment, is trying to simplify the science, so that everyone gets it. But setting that aside, again, this phenomena is universal, and in particular, it's global, and yeah, and we know where it's coming from.
That is really cool, and that actually leads a little bit of topic-wise to the question that Sober Carper has, is, are there any accounts of the black-eyed children in Ireland, or is this a similar phenomenon with a different name?
There are accounts of black-eyed children, yes. David, I can't remember his name. I have his book here. I can't remember, but David, he's been across in Ireland, and subsequently, since then, there have been accounts of people coming forward saying that they're seeing these people who are coming to the door and have this phenomena. Now, it's rare. It's not broad scale. It's not happening all the time. It's very, very rare. In fact, we would get more reports of UFOs and fairies, and other aspects, ghosts and everything else, than we do black-eyed children. So it is very, very rare, but it does happen. It also happens in the UK. It happens in France and Spain.
Okay, and let's see. Matt is asking, what are Barry's thoughts on the ancient island of High Brazil, once existing off the west coast of Ireland?
There have been a lot of investigations into High Brazil, and I did do some of my own investigating into it as well. There is an ancient map that shows High Brazil, but it also shows another island called Damar, further south. And I was intrigued by those particular maps because the Irish Geological Society released a batch of seabed scans off the west coast on the Porcupine Bank. And I got my hands on a copy of those, and I was going through them. And lo and behold, there was several underwater structures, let's say, that almost mimicked the ancient maps showing High Brazil and Damar. The problem is that these things are 200 feet under the surface. So how would they know that those things were there? Now, the sea levels, yes, they have rose, they have went down again, but not enough, not 200 feet. So I ended up, I went to Dublin, and I spoke to some of the scientists responsible. And I said, look, tell me, what are these? And the first one said, well, it's probably a coral reef, coral island. And I said, okay, the problem I have with this is that you said probably. Is there any chance I could get a second opinion on this? So she went and got one of her colleagues who came back and said, well, it's probably an underwater volcano. I said, so we've gone from a coral island on a probably to a probable volcano. So we don't actually know what those things are. But it's strange that it does seem to tie in with the ancient map that was being shown. Now, High Brazil was seen. My goodness, it was seen, I think, in the 1980s was the last time that it was seen. And I have seen in other instances, and I've spoke to people who have had experiences where you get this, I forget what it's called now, it's a particular mirage, but you're able to see over the horizon, and it projects there. And what it actually showed from the west coast of Ireland, it was a part of the islands of Scotland, on this mirage that seemed to hover above the horizon. It's just one of those things, it happens naturally. But that certainly wasn't High Brazil. That wouldn't explain High Brazil, because it was further west and also further south. So So that's the only things I can say about High Brazil really. In that instance, is that there is something that does seem to tie in with the scans that were done, maybe 8 years ago. And I would love to have gone out there, but it's 200 feet down. I'm not going to be like the ones in the Titanic and go down in a plastic bucket. I don't need to do that. But I do wonder if we had a scanner down there, if we did have something down there, what are we likely to see? I just don't know.
Would be interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Another question from Matt. He says, does Barry think that the Devil's Causeway carries any supernatural power? I'm not sure if he's on about the Devil's Causeway or the Giant's Causeway.
I've never heard of the Devil's Causeway.
It must be the Giant's Causeway then.
Yeah, if it's the Giant's Causeway, no, I don't think there's any supernatural power there. No. Now, what we tend to see is that anything that tends to be associated with the devil, and this comes from David Paulides' work over in the United States, the author of Missing 411. He has identified that you get a strange amount of activity around places that have the devil mentioned in it. These negative connotations. You'll get strange disappearances and things like that. But I have to say, in regards to Matt's question there, I don't know. Oh, he's just corrected. There's the Giant's Causeway. I see. The Giant's Causeway is free. It's tourist friendly.
Yeah. It's an amazing place. I know it's got some history about two giants, one in Scotland and one in Ireland.
Oh yeah, Finn McCool. Yeah.
That's quite interesting. I was going to ask you, is there any chance you could tell a little bit about just a little bit of intel about what your book is actually about?
The Deceptions of Gods and Men.
Yeah.
Certainly. It's an examination of the phenomena that's coming through from the void. The way that it depicts itself, the way that it communicates with us, and what we need to watch out for, how it attaches to us, and how we can turn that around. There is a huge amount of deception that is involved with a lot of the phenomena that permeates through from the void. And this comes from either from even lifting a voice recorder and saying, is there anyone there, to Ouija board sessions or anything like that. It's about what we're dealing with, know what we're dealing with, and really establish a real a cornerstone, a real foundation in understanding what we're dealing with, because humanity seems to experience this amnesia, and we see this time and time again, especially when we're dealing with something that's coming through and gives us 4 lies and 1 truth. And suddenly, because it's given us 1 truth, oh, this is great Auntie Betty or Uncle Buck or whatever the case may be, and we ignore the 4 lies that have been told, and we concentrate on that 1 truth. Well, there's a wake-up call. If it's going to lie to you once, it will lie to you again and again and again and again. And the book itself examines why they're doing what they're doing, and how we can counteract that. And what we tended to see is that when we become curious about the phenomena, and we want some questions answered to clarify where it's coming from, 9 times out of 10, it's gone. It will jump ship. It does not want to be discovered. Its true essence does not want to be discovered. So that book itself really delves into that. It looks at what we're communicating with in its various formats and its various manifestations. And in particular, we also look at this aspect of the shining ones, my nemesis. These beings that appear and have become almost angelic-like, and references and statues have been created for Mother Mary and things like that. And it's about questioning those. and understanding what our bodies are telling us in the first 20 seconds of that experience. Because that's where the true work of this comes in. Because number one, if I've got something that's appearing in front of me and telling me, do not be afraid. No, if my body is reacting, then that gift of discernment has already let me know, danger, be aware. This is not what it seems. And you get that message within the first 20 seconds. If the hair stands up in the back of our necks, it doesn't matter if that is a depiction of a little child or a black cat that had died 3 weeks before, whatever the case may be. If our bodies react within the first 20 seconds and gets us ready to move, it's getting us ready to move because there's a threat that has been detected.
Yeah.
And that's something we need to understand. If we choose to ignore that, then we roll through the 20 seconds. And that's whenever they can link into us on a conscious level and actually turn off our gift of discernment. That's a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Matt has an interesting question, and I'm actually going to kind of tweak it a little bit. Is he's asking your thoughts on demons. And my tweak of it is, with you being on GHI and doing your own investigations, do you feel that demonic is as prevalent as some people are saying, or that in most cases it's just misidentified of an angry spirit that just people are saying, oh, it's demonic?
Demonic is another mask. Daemon is another mask. Jinn, genie, they're all masks of the same phenomena. Again, that's what the book, The Deceptions of Gods and Men, looks at and draws that out. It's something that really forces us to look. And the next book, in fact, Staring into Darkness, it really strips that apart and examines why this phenomena comes through and does what it does to us, and why it needs to do that. So the way it interacts and everything else, and the reasons why it can't stay here indefinitely. There are things that need to be locked in for it to stay here on a longer term basis. So we're looking at all of that. We're delving into that. But demons are nothing more, and we shouldn't get lost in this aspect of the surface identity, the mask that is applied to this, because a huge amount of that is just nonsense. It's the core of these things. That's what we should be connected with. That's what we should be looking at, and that's what we need to examine. What are these things at their core? Because what we tend to find is that on the surface, there's a lot of interpretation which is being utilized to serve a certain paradigm, a certain rhetoric. So we need to really eradicate those and look at it on its core basis. And by doing that, that's whenever we started to find the answers. And one more thing I should say, whenever I was talking about the communications coming through, if you have questions, don't be afraid to ask them, because if the being is there and it is there for you, for your benefit, it will not mind a few questions for clarity. And that is an important thing to remember. It will not mind a few questions for clarity. But time and time again, we see this even from the old gods. Do not question me. Do what I say to the letter, or you'll be kicked out. Okay, now we've got a problem. So that's where we stand. That's certainly where I stand.
That's really interesting. I mean, I was watching a documentary about David Icke before, and he was saying that all these, like the jinn and everything else, is all connected the same way as what you've just mentioned there as well. And basically, it's just lower level like negative energies and stuff like that to try and like create negativity so they can use us as a battery, basically.
I'm familiar with David's work, but I would say that that's where we diverge, and where we're coming in with the next book is going to be a game changer, because it really forces us to look at who we are as a species, and you see, for us, we use the term soul and spirit. It's very interchangeable in the New Age, but that's not the case. We should never have done that, because the soul is different. The soul is fundamentally is different than the spirit. We form a trinity of the spirit, soul, and body. It's understanding those that we create balance. But a soul that is out of balance, that can cause a lot of trouble.
We've got another question off Andy Decodes. He says, which one was it again? What or where does Barry consider the most active paranormal place on Earth?
You know, I was listening to a podcast the other day, and it was I think it's called the WF Files. Wonderful young lad does a remarkable podcast in the US, but he was covering these strange sounds that were happening underneath the surface of the water and the oceans, the great oceans. And there was one in particular that he said he brought forward. It was the bloop. I think it was recorded in the late 90s or the early noughties, and the sound, he said, what we usually hear is this particular sound, but when it's played at its normal speed, this is what it sounds like. I immediately recognized the sound, because that was the same frequencies that we use to open the doorways. So the next question is, who under the ocean is opening portals? So to answer Andy's question, I would imagine that there is a lot that we're missing. Forget the lands. There's a lot that we're missing within the water. And we're seeing that even from across on the east coast of England. There's a huge amount of phenomena happening in the water there, which is not being fully understood. You know, you've got these lights coming out of the ocean. You've got this strange phenomena that's happening along that east coast, which I feel is not being fully. There are a handful of researchers, of course, that are doing it, but they need more assistance. They need more work. They need more backing to get the answers of that. But now we've also got the hum that is happening here in Ireland, and we've got that all the way down the west coast of Ireland, that we've been hearing now for years. I was first introduced to the hum in 2013, and I haven't been able to stop hearing it since. It's not tinnitus or anything like that. This is different. It's usually comes in around 45 hertz. It's very, very low. Now, what is it? I don't know. Its behavior is very, very unusual. It's because when you go after it and you try and pinpoint where it's coming from, the next day it'll have shifted. It moves to a different location. And if you're speaking to people about it, suddenly it stops. Well, that's not that almost would suggest that there's a consciousness to this.
Yeah.
What is going on here? This is not natural. There's something bizarre going on. But I suppose to get back to Andy's core question, what he would like is to know, where's the most haunted place? I don't really know. I couldn't really say, Andy, offhand, because if there was one that was wonderfully haunted and had all this phenomena going on, then the whole world would be at it. You know, we'd be all over it. There are locations out there that phenomena does happen at. Even locations that I've been at that I won't say where they are, because those places are dangerous.
Mm.
They're not for the inexperienced. And this is something that we're finding today more so than ever, that we're getting people getting involved in the phenomena and not even in the research. They're just out for, pardon my English, they're just out for shits and giggles and not understanding the full threats behind this. Now, there's a location in Ireland here that I visited, and it was an old quarry, and the things there, they were, it was smashing the offices apart. Religious icons or iconography were being pulverized into powder.
Wow.
People were being clubbed in the back of the head who were using the table saws, and they were chopping their fingers off. They were falling forward and their fingers come off. They brought in 4 German shepherds onto site because of this entity that was being seen. They were convinced it had to be someone real. It had to be someone physical because they're seeing him, but they never saw his face.
Mm.
And they brought the 4 German shepherds, 4 trained German shepherds. It murdered every single one of them.
Oh my God.
So these cases do exist, but these are not cases for the normal shits and giggles group.
Yeah.
Because that's when they end up in trouble.
Mhm.
And they end up trying to find people like me to say, well, what can we do? Well, why were you there in the first place?
Yeah.
And we Cormac and I, my co-author of Legend Seekers, we investigated a lot of these locations. And in one of our books, The Legend Seekers, we release the GPS coordinates of a lot of the locations that we visited, and also the people that you need to ask for permission to go to those locations, because we wanted to inspire people to get off their backsides and away from the PlayStations and their Xboxes and everything else, and get back into the countryside, plug in, connect, ground to the earth itself, because that's something we're missing.
Yeah.
And but there are some locations that we investigated that we simply cannot allow people to go to. And I'm sure there are a lot of people out there that would be greatly annoyed by the fact that we will not release that, but we're releasing that to protect the ones that are coming behind us.
Yeah.
Right. I'm curious, Barry, kind of piggybacking on what you were saying about the stuff in the ocean. Why do you think that we're taught that the final frontier for us to explore is outer space when we haven't even begun to explore our own oceans? Why do you think they don't want us to explore the oceans?
Oh, we have explored the oceans. We have explored the oceans. In fact, we're exploring further than the oceans now. But you're not meant to know what we found in the oceans. So the oceans are very well explored. In fact, a lot of the phenomena that we see now, a lot of the UAPs now, the new term, is a lot of our technology, and that in itself, it really goes to show what is going on there. This sleight of hand that is developing. One of the UAPs, when it appeared, there was also this inference that there was a submarine was also dropping off. So it was fired from a submarine on the surface. And, look, when you've got a multi-trillion-dollar black budget, you're not going to tell a couple of pilots, oh, by the way, you're going after our technology. You don't do that. The pilots are reporting back on what they're seeing. They're seeing a technology that, this is amazing. This is way ahead of anything we have ever seen before. But we're not being told that particular fleet, the US fleet, the Pacific fleet, were also kitted out before leaving port twice to track high-speed objects over the horizon, exceptionally high-speed objects over the horizon. This was a new weapon system that was being tested. And then when you've got reporters from the likes of Russia there saying that, well, we can send a rocket up now and from Moscow to London and it'll be there within 200 seconds. Well, aren't you going to have a weapon system that will intercept that high-speed object? Of course. It's all just sleight of hand. And what we see is happening now is that this is all being mixed in to this whole UFO thing. And like you've got this um, public hearing now going on within the U.S. government, and you've got this guy coming forward, Grush, I think his name is.
Right.
Grush is giving us absolutely nothing that hasn't been said over the last 50 years. And in fact, the people who were giving it over the last 50 years were told to be conspiracy theorists. But because the media believe him now, we're to believe the media when he actually gives us nothing, just a bag of air. But he can talk about it in other areas, that other sealed rooms. Of course, he can deliver those secrets, which in itself is absolute nonsense. I could go into more and more and say more, but I shan't. But no, it's all sleight of hand. That's all it is. And we've got modern media that is coming out and backing it for whatever reason, to try and stop us from looking in certain directions. Look at this hand, don't look at that one.
Yeah. Yep. Going back to another comment about a question of Matt. He says, does Barry think that ghosts and spirits are souls that haven't crossed over to the afterlife? Are they trapped between dimensions, or can they travel between dimensions at will?
What tended to happen, if we go back and we look at the pre-Christian traditions to the north, we see that that the bodies were brought to these ancient mounds, and they were left, and it was there that the soul decoupled. The spirit was gone at that point. The moment that death arrives, the spirit's gone. Mm-hmm. But it takes the soul days to weeks to decouple from the body. Now, when it decouples, that's whenever it goes through, there was known to go through this state of metempsychosis. It changed. And it changed its form, and it entered these mounds. So these mounds themselves, as we know, they were built by people from Syria and Iraq and all the rest. That whole idea came from the east, moving west. But we had this idea of ancestral worship in which these places we went to and we could commune with our ancestors. That's not technically the way that they worked. Because these places tended to have these doorways, these liminal places where the gatekeepers gave the information over. Those gatekeepers were seen as serpents. The keepers of knowledge were often depicted as a serpent. Now, as the soul decouples from the body, which is stated in the Nordic traditions, it changed into a serpent before entering the mound. But it took with it all the knowledge that it had learnt over the course of that life. It went back into the void. So for us, of course, we're accessing this Akashic records, the global consciousness and everything else. We're using part of our, I made a mistake there. We're using part of the soul's ability to access the void. You see, all of our psychic abilities, all of them originate with the soul. So I know that we're getting close to the end of our time. Here's something to consider. We often see the soul and we claim it to be, as well as mine. It's my soul. What if it's not? What if it never was? So, yeah, I'll say no more because that links into the next book.
I love how you described that, Barry, and I'm looking at the picture behind you of the triqueta with the mound, and I started thinking about, like, here in America, we have all these mounds around, and we associate them to the Native Americans. And now I'm starting to think are we misidentifying our mounds? And they're like the Irish mounds, as you're saying, which are gateways to other areas. And is that why, like, we have Serpent Mound, or we have little areas that are just a bunch of mounds coming up and we're destroying them? Is that
Yeah, there's a huge of that. There's a huge lot of it that has been misunderstood, and a lot of it hasn't conformed to what our mainstream archaeology would prefer that we believed. So the mounds, from the Irish perspective, the mounds, there are three things that activate the mounds. Vibration, as in sound. There's certain sounds that are attributed to activating them. Timing is everything. So there are light frequencies that activate them at the same time. And there is also a particular chemical that activates. And that chemical can be seen, part of that origin of the chemical can be seen in the ancient Akkadian wall art of around 1300 BC, I think it was, in which one of the geniuses, the semi-gods, this creature with an eagle's head and wings, is standing, handing over this cone to the high priest or the king. Though that particular fruit that's being handed over is vital. There's a chemical within that is vital when you begin to access the doorway to the void. So there are three things there that activate. We now understand what those are. And having experienced some of this myself, it is quite a unique experience to have. And I have been to one of the locations where I shouldn't have been, and was snooping around and had one of the worst experiences that I've ever had in my entire life. In fact, I was frightened beyond frightened. But that's whenever I was introduced to that aspect of the serpent and the mounds. That really changed my paradigm. But it allowed me to see where I had gone wrong. And I was able to survive to lick my wounds.
Yeah, I've just noticed that Matt's put in the comments that DMT.
No. Not DMT. The problem with DMT, you see, is that if for instance, you smoke DMT, it's like being fired out of your body like a cannon. Boom, you're gone. The problem is that you leave behind your gift of discernment, which is the body.
Mm-hmm.
That's where our gift of discernment lies. It's a physical response. Mm-hmm. And when you leave that behind, who you meet on the other side can tell you anything that it wishes to, because you will believe all of it and bring it back and fill our bookshelves full of all the nonsense. So we need the gift of discernment. We still need to be coupled to the body, because every part of that trinity has certain strengths that should all work together. What that chemical does is increase our circulatory system, our intelligence, and there's a multitude of other things that it does. It really enhances a broad range of abilities within the human body at that time. Reason: the gods have no wish to talk to someone who's stupid. And timing is everything. You got to know when you do that. You got to know when to push the doorbell.
Yeah. Another question there from Andy. Does Barry think that source could just be the universe itself?
No. Universe is not out to destroy us.
Michael, any more questions?
To be honest, I'm still processing all the information, and it's like I had all these thoughts, and actually one thought that I'm curious about, Barry's opinion is a lot of people are asking now about the shadow people. Are those prominent in Ireland? And what are your feelings?
Yeah.
That
You'll have those. You'll have
are?
those across. You'll have those across the globe in itself. Again, the shadow people are the same source. It's just another mask, but it's the same source. One rule to stand by, and before I sign off, one rule to stand by is he who wins, or he who owns the body wins. It's very important. Always remember that. And another one, whenever I was writing the book, The Influence, which looks at this aspect of the shadow people and how attachments occur and what the attachments are doing to us on a biological level and how we can turn that back. There was a warning given to me at that particular point whenever I was writing that book: don't become too bright or they see you. Now we're living at a time now where we need to shine. So that's me signing out.
That is quite a sign out, because I'm like, wow.
Gives us something to think about anyway. Because we're just over the hour, could you please tell everybody where they could find you if they want to speak to you about anything?
Yeah, they can reach me on Facebook. They'll find me there. I'm also on Twitter. And that's about it. I don't make a big impact on social media. So that's that. And folks, if they wish to get a copy of the Deceptions of Gods and Men, it's available on hardback, softback, ebook, and audiobook. I absolutely love the audiobook. So it's you'll find that on Amazon.
Yeah, definitely. I'll be investing in that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for joining me tonight. Michael, we haven't got a show next week, have we?
Next week we are off because of it being Thanksgiving holiday in the U.S.
Yeah.
And the following week we will be back with Ane Shin. Good.
So I just want to thank everybody for all the comments, and again thanking Barry for he's fantastic. It's given me a lot to think about. So like I say, it's been an absolutely brilliant show. So I'll let you close out, Michael.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you to all who are watching this and will watch it. And thank you, Barry, for a truly awesome episode, and cannot wait to have you back on, because I feel like there's so much more.
Yeah.
And so to everybody out there, whether it's daytime, nighttime, or the afternoon, make it a blessed day. And thank you for watching, and have a great one.
Bye.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us at Paranormal Versus. Hope to see you on our next episode.